Again, so we're just talking about the evolution of the SODs, really. So many of you might be familiar with the story, but there'll be aspects of it that you may not have heard before. So we all know that the traditional fishing boat in Lough is the 18-foot rowing boat, clinker built with small wine glass transom. First mention of these boats competing at Lough Yacht Club regattas with sails is as early as 1862. One might assume that they were sailed by islanders and fishermen, but as islanders could hardly have afforded the entry fee of 2 shillings and sixpence, it was probably paid for them. There were 2 races offered. One for bona fide fishing boats, and they had to be 16 foot long on the keel or under and sailed with the sprit and the foresail. Prizes were £3 for the winner and £1 for second place. So the second race was for boats without jibs. The reports noted that the race took a course of 8 miles and the racing was very tight. This was probably because the boats were more evenly matched than were the big keel boats. The keel boats, they're all different sizes, they all traveled at different speeds. So the 18-foot rowing boats, they were all the same size and started together. So the racing in them was much closer than anybody ever saw in the big boats. These sprits were raced by boat builders Nortons and Browns, by army personnel and by minor gentry. There were no reports of centreboard racing for many years until 1887. Sorry, where are we now? 1887. Some of us might recognize some of the names there. Ned Norton of Dry Cow Island and Thomas Ward, boat builders from the Strand. Robert Leving, farmer from Roscommon, and the Duffys from Hare Island. It was described as one of the prettiest sights on the lake. The sprit rig evolved from the sprit into a gunter rig like this. And a trophy was given for these boats, the Portlick Challenge Cup in 1904, which was won by P.R. Kelly's Phyllis, with a course to Hudson Bay and Beam Island taking 3 hours and 8 minutes in light winds. I suggest that today's owners don't have the patience of their predecessors. By 1910, there was no limit on the sail area for the 18-footers. That year, it was also significant that a lady helm was present, Miss Violet Augusta McGann, sailing in eggshell. We note also the arrival of a visitor from Belle Isle and Lough Derg, Lord Avonmore's son, Mr. Yelverton. All the boats were provided with individual handicaps, as you can see there, that everybody had a different handicap. In fact, there's one in 5 minutes, which is quite a... So the boats weren't that well matched, really. In 1911, the sail area was restricted to 100 square foot and a crew of only 2 persons. And progressively more sophisticated boats arrived with carvel hulls. Now, I think that this is a pretty interesting picture to look at. So you actually there have Shannon 1 Designs racing. And this 18-footer looks considerably longer than a Shannon. And the 100 square foot sail area is actually bigger than the 140 square foot on the Shannons. So there was a problem with measuring sail area at that time.
That's a change.
And so there's an image of one of the 18-footers. So all in all, during the war, the builders and designers moving on. In 1926, the committee saw waterwags, which operated under strict one model rules with no need for any handicapping. And during the suspension of regattas during the Great War, there was an opportunity to rethink what should be done about the 18-footers so that they wouldn't become quickly outdated. In January 1920, Major Gerard Stratford Hancock convened a meeting of members of the three Shannon yacht clubs, the North Shannon, Lough and Lough Derg, to review the possibility of a one design for the Shannon. The committee reached an agreement on the design brief. So this is what they were trying to achieve. 18 foot long, 4 foot 10 beam, draft with the plate down of 4 feet, sail area of 140 square feet, sails to be properly measured. Dagger keel not to exceed 35 pounds. The spars to be in timber or bamboo, crew of either 2 or 3 persons, and the boats to be properly measured. A designer with a good reputation to be employed, and the old 18-footers to be allowed to sail against these new one designs. And the regulations were required to stay the same for at least 5 years. The man selected to prepare the design was Francis Morgan Giles from Tynemouth in Devon, who became established as a designer of the West of England Conference dinghy. So that's his boatyard staff. And that's the boat that he became famous for. So in the West of England Conference, it was really, they said that your boat had to be 14 feet, had to be X width, had to have a certain sail area. And within those limitations, he designed the fastest boats. So you can see very light ribbing and some quite interesting features. So that was the kind of boat that he was famous for. He started as a boat building apprentice with a company called Pengelly and Gore in 1895, set up his own boat building and designing business in 1902, initially in Hammersmith. One of his designs from 1911 is this one, which is the Blackwater Sailing Club one design for a club in Essex. Although only 12.5 feet long, it has many of the features of the Shannon one design. It has the lug rig, which was designed for the Shannon one design. Relatively forward mast position, the familiar rudder shape that we're familiar with. The rib spacing again is similar to what was selected for the Shannon. The seat layout and the bow shape, all quite like a Shannon, the Shannon one design. This class unfortunately no longer exists. The Shannon one design history compares the Shannon one design with a different one of Morgan Giles' designs, the Essex one design. This is the Essex one design, which sailed really very much like a keelboat with big heavy centerboard in it. Frankly, I don't quite see the comparison between that and the Shannon. It's really quite different. The hull shape might be similar, but the whole concept is quite different. The Shannon one design drawings were supplied to Gerald Hancock, and in 1921, an owner, Otway Graham Toller, aged 34, from Durrow Domain, ordered the boat from Walter Leving of Craigduff, just up the road from here. And this was effectively a trial boat. That boat differed from the Morgan Giles boat in many respects. The centerboard, the centerboard case sides were shortened, and that was probably because of the timbers that were available in Lister's yard at the time in Athlone. The patent keel hoist was omitted on the ground probably of being too complex. It was a patent that Morgan Giles himself had devised for lifting these very, very heavy centerboards. And of course, because the centerboard that was used in the Shannons wasn't as heavy, they didn't need this complex and expensive piece of equipment. Also, the brass main sheet horse was omitted on the grounds of probably being too expensive, which enabled a simpler tiller arrangement to operate. Cast iron was not produced in Athlone because the specification asked for a cast iron centerboard, so an iron boilerplate iron centerboard was employed instead. The buoyancy tanks were omitted. Why was that, I wonder? Because the 18-footers never used buoyancy, so nobody saw the need for buoyancy. So no buoyancy was provided. Also, the rig was changed from the lug rig, which was designed by the designer, to a more powerful gunter rig. This is probably because the 18-footers had gone through the same process, and they saw that the lug rig was really too old-fashioned. In the winter of 1921-22, many boats were built by various builders, but predominantly by Walter Leving. And despite the Civil War and other unrest, a substantial fleet developed, which produced fair races without any handicap system, and in races where the most skillful helmsman could win. And this original fleet, now much extended, continues to the present day. Thank you very much.